Hi, welcome to the We Are All Dying podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Goodhand, and I started this podcast in order to have conversations about death so that we could become more comfortable with them. We could understand all the ways in which people experience loss, grief, death, facing our own ending, in the hopes that we become more conscious, more connected, more supportive of one another, and really just make the most of what's left. On today's show, I talk with Tyson, and we discuss how the early loss of his mother influenced his entire life, his career, and how he's chosen to live out his days. Let's talk about death.
Okay.
I mean, you and I have, and actually, you were kind of the final instigator or nudge to get me to actually put this into some sort of format. So, thank you for that. It's
You're
been
welcome. I remember our conversation. Absolutely.
yeah, it's been a journey already. I've only had maybe 4 conversations that have been recorded, but my life has changed, and I'm looking forward to having some more sort of insightful moments today with you. So thank you
Awesome.
for showing up as you always do.
Again,
Um,
absolutely my pleasure.
so I mean, because we've talked about so many things, let's just see kind of what comes when I ask you how death has changed your life.
Well, death has changed my life in a myriad of ways, but it has been transformational because if you talk about sort of foundational memories or sort of big turning points in your life or things that, are forged in steel that make you who you are, my mom passing when I was 10 was certainly a big thing. And it's something that I learned even more as an adult, how that changed things like my, the way that I partnered with people and my attachment style, but we'll get into that. So yeah, mom passed when I was 10. I was just about 11. She was 36 years old. She had a brain tumor. This was in the 70s, 80s. So she passed away in 81. But for most of my life before that, I literally have no memories of her at home because it was in the 70s. I remember for a very long time, if anybody asked what was wrong with our mom, we said she had MS because that's what they thought because it was the 70s and the loss of her right arm and her left leg, lost use of those, and occasional slurred speech symptomatically felt like MS. And it was honestly, I think 77 or 78 when my mom and dad hopped on a train and went to Montreal to get a CAT scan because it was the only one in Eastern Canada. That's how crazy that is. And that's when they went, oh, I see we have a problem here. And they found the tumor. They did surgery, but she was never going to walk again. And yeah, and then when I was in spring of 81, she had a bit of an incident and collapsed, and then they brought her in, and they're like, yeah, it's growing. And then it was only a matter of time, and she was in intensive care for a couple of weeks, and then it was over. So that incident obviously formed me in a lot of ways because of coming through a trauma and everything else.
Mhm.
But it's interesting that it has also formed in some ways my career in that since I was 18, I've been a motivational speaker. I mean, it wasn't my full-time job when I was 18 years old. I went to university, wanted to be a teacher, did all these things, but I started doing it when I was 18 and kind of kept doing it throughout university and then kind of went full-time into it in my mid-20s. And one of the foundational stories that I talk about is the loss of my mom and her as an inspiration. And then subsequent from that, all kinds of other things about loss and overcoming obstacles and everything else. It was probably her death was the biggest teachable moment in my life
Absolutely.
in and continues to be.
Mhm. So I want to go from there, but I also want to go back to, a lot of times people talk about when we lose somebody, when someone dies, we're holding on to these memories. Like
Yes.
we are carrying them in the rest of our lives through the things we remember about them. But you kind of mentioned you didn't have a lot of memories prior, and then you sort of had this, you know, the focus of your memories with her was her health, right?
Yes.
And her dying. So how do memories kind of show up for you in that loss?
Well, a lot of them, there are a lot of memories in hospitals because they didn't know what was wrong. Sometimes she'd be 2 weeks in one hospital or care facility or something like that, or a month in a place while they were trying to literally figure out what was happening. And then where a lot of the core memories are eventually, and I didn't find out the whole backstory of this until later with a therapy experiment and having something my therapist had suggested and having a longer conversation with my dad when they went to Montreal. um, my mom said to my dad, I guess when they left, she said, "I'm not coming back in this house unless I can walk in."
Wow.
That was that was what she said, and she couldn't. And so her parents, my grandparents, moved from Toronto, or they had already moved from Toronto to Union, just outside of St. Thomas, where I am. They had an all one-story house with wide hallways. It had an intercom, so one of those old 70s, 80s intercom systems that people used to have. And they got a hospital bed, so she lived there. So she was 7, 8 minutes down the road. But when I was a kid, it felt like a long journey because it was out in the country in the middle of nowhere. But our weekends, a lot of the time, would be staying at my grandparents' house so we could see mom.
Mhm.
And so I've got a lot of core memories of mom there at my grandparents' house, not at our house. She was close by and we would have these family weekends, but we were at my grandparents' house. So I have a lot of memories of that. And then
Mhm.
the other ones are literally just standing beside her in a hospital room.
Mhm. And so, through your family, they've probably told you stories like prior to, you being born. Um, are there ways that you have created a relationship with your mother since she's died?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't consider myself a heavily religious person, but I do. I maybe I'd consider myself spiritual. I don't know exactly what label I would put on it if I even want to, but let's put it this way: probably since I was a teenager and really started to process that loss, ever since then, if I am in what would be the traditional sense called praying, I'm talking to mom. Like if I would lie in bed in my room as a teenager, if I was sad or worried or anxious or upset about something, I would have a conversation with mom. That's what I would be doing. And so that's sort of how that relationship is. And then I think that also I've built a relationship through keeping her memory alive in the stories that I tell. I mean, I talk about her, I think about her every day. I talk about her any day that I'm working. And I would like to think like the whole thing for me is, am I honoring the memory? Am I being of service? And I would like to think that. I mean, even just a couple of weeks ago, and you and I had talked about it, I did a big speaking tour out in BC and did, 13, 14 different schools and was in front of a lot of high school students. And I had a couple of them come up, as sometimes does, come up the end, and somebody saying, yeah, I just lost somebody, a grandparent, a parent, an uncle, a mom. And sometimes it's very fresh. Something like, I just lost my mom a couple of years ago. And as I tell them, I hate to be the one to break this to you, it's never going away. You never get over it. You carry it always, but it's the biggest thing for me is how you carry it.
Mhm.
Is it weight? Is it a defining moment that drags you down? Are you a victim because of it? Or is it fuel? For me, it's fuel. I want to live my life in a way that would make her proud. And it's one of the reasons I do what I do for a living. And one of the reasons why I share and tell these stories and have these conversations with people on stage or one on one is to honor that and to help people get through their own traumas in whatever way I can.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, I mean, in your motivational speaking, you're essentially speaking to life, right? This
Yes.
space we have in between birth and death is life. Um, how do you think your approach to the life bit is different maybe than, I mean, this is a big industry, motivational speaking,
Sure.
life coaching, everything like that. How is your approach maybe a little different because of the focus on the death of your mother, or this, very, um, in our face or in the conversation realization that this isn't forever?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one caveat, the whole speech isn't about that, certainly. The whole presentation isn't that. It tends to be something in the latter third to the latter quarter of an hour that I would do. What I find interesting and fascinating every single time is I mean, I like to be funny. I like to tell stories and like to make people laugh. I front load a presentation with that to get people on board and help them to come along the journey with me. But I see when I get about midway through any given presentation, especially if I'm in a middle school or high school, I'll be talking about overcoming obstacles and resilience and being positive without a lot of direct personal examples just yet. I'll be talking in platitudes isn't the right word, but I'm talking in about these general terms that some people have had, shoved down their throats. And I can see the looks on people's faces watching going, yeah, you don't know. You don't know. And I can see that look of, yeah, sure, whatever, bald guy. You don't know my life. And then when I get into the heavy stuff later and talk about my own personal experience, it creates that connection in a way. And then I go back to those same faces in the audience and I can see them go, oh, you do know. Okay. Now I believe you. Now I see that, okay, that, you had this trauma, you had this bad thing happen in your life, and you're this positive and happy person. Okay. Okay. Now I can listen. Now I can, pick up. Now I'll go back and think about those other things that you talked about and maybe think about them a little differently and not dismiss them as much because I know you've got the street cred, for lack of a better term.
Mhm. Why do you think it's important that we think about death?
Because as you have titled this podcast, my friend, we're all dying. There is no escaping this. Nobody gets out of this game alive. And so I think it's important that we talk about it. It's so many people fear it, right? Like it's probably one of the biggest fears, though. I do find it funny in the industry that I'm in. There was an old what's it Jerry Seinfeld bit where he talked about that they've done surveys and the number one fear in the world is public speaking. And in the Jerry voice, it's death was number two. And so his joke always is, so you're telling me at a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy, which I always found funny, in that I'm doing this thing that people fear. But it is one of the greatest fears. People fear death, but it's inevitable. I'm not saying that you just, go live your life wild and crazy and you don't care about anything and you eat whatever you want and do whatever you want. You want to be healthy, you want to live, you want to be there for people, and I certainly don't wish it, but I know it's coming. I mean, I know my sister shared this, and she and I had a conversation about this years and years ago, but mom passed when she was 36. And I remember for a very long time in my life, not in a way that I could necessarily articulate, but if somebody asked me to picture myself as an old man, I couldn't. I could not see myself past 36. There was just a full stop right there. Not that I thought I was going to die. I didn't, but that I never got to see mom past that age. So I never saw myself past that age. And then I remember when I turned 37, it was like, oh, okay, whole new world. And, a lot of things in my life changed in the years following that. But I still know, like, there, I can do everything I can to be healthy, to have longevity, to live a full and healthy and active and whatever life. But some random act of somebody being careless, I could walk out on the street today and get hit by a bus, and there's absolutely nothing I can do about that. There is, in a lot of ways, nothing you can do about that. And so I got to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. And so are there some things, I mean, maybe you're working on them now that are important to you in like what you and I have called bonus time?
Well, yeah, I was telling you about a friend of mine that I hope you will be speaking to on the podcast, my friend Mark, who is a fellow speaker and had a double lung and heart transplant 20 years ago and has considered these 20 years bonus time. And yeah, sort of my after 37 kind of felt like bonus time for me.
Right.
And yeah, there's things I want to do. But There's this image I always get in my head, and I was talking to a dear old friend of mine years ago who was frantic about some relationship stuff, and he's always been frantic about relationship stuff, just desperately like was in love with being in love kind of thing for, the shortest possible way to describe it. And I don't know why I had this clear picture in my head that just and I go back to this picture in my head all the time where I said to him, "Listen, my friend, I feel like your whole life you've picture yourself in the middle of a beautiful woods with a crystal clear stream in front of you. And your whole life you've been cupping your hands and trying to frantically scoop up the water and drink it and just drink and drink the water. But no matter how well you cup your hands, no matter how well you keep your fingers together, you're never getting enough. And one day you're just going to have to realize that you have to wade into the stream and let it just flow around you." And I literally find such peace in picturing that, but also saying that. Like, I think I get a oxytocin dump because my back of my head gets warm when I talk about it. And I just, it gives me such peace. Yeah. You just go into the stream, let it wait around you, like just accept, let things come to you, become a part of this life instead of fighting. And so many people are this rise and grind and rah rah, there's so much anger and competitiveness. I just want to flow because there's nothing I can do about a lot of stuff in this life.
Mm-hmm. So, speaking of that, later in your life, your dad had a bit of a health thing
Yes.
there,
Yeah, well, yeah, when we spoke about this as sort of as a, I guess, a pre-interview conversation
Yeah,
that we had, but
yeah.
yeah, Dad, through my later teens, Dad had struggled with his heart. Probably didn't live the healthiest life, and there was some genetic factors in there as well. And when I was 19, he had had a heart attack and like a mild one, but then they took him in. He was going in for a single bypass. He ended up getting a quadruple. So that was another pivotal moment. I remember my brother and I leaving my dad in the hospital, and he was going back to Toronto, and I was going back to school in Ottawa. And we let the elevator doors close and didn't know if we were going to see him again.
Mm.
And that was another thing to face. But then years later, he's been a great success story for his cardiologist, 30 plus years after a quadruple, and all he's had is a minor angioplasty. But he had been getting some blockage, some plaque in his carotid, and sat down with myself and my siblings and had this conversation that he had this partial blockage, and the doctors had warned him something comes off of there, massive stroke, and it's all over. And so he just had to let us know, like, this is not if, but when this happens. And this was only a few years ago. And I
Mhm.
remember the great peace that I felt in the conversation because he just looked at me and I said, "I want you to know when this happens, I'm good. I'm okay. I'm happy." And I can't tell you the peace that has brought me, and it's something that I think about all the time. The silver lining, the good part to this story, the good news, bad news, we got a few months later, the blockage became complete on one side, which removed the stroke risk, and his body compensated and was moving all the blood through the other side. And he's now got word that it's all going away now too. So he's doing a real good job and everything's great. But just this sense that, yeah, if it all goes tomorrow, I'm okay. And I have worked to get myself to that place with when it comes to just inner peace and satisfaction with what I've done in this life. And I think I may have told you before too, when we were having a conversation, a fellow speaker friend of mine who's an excellent question asker. Just one day we were having one of our, 5 or 6 times a week conversations that we have. And he said, "Hey, I got a question for you." He said, you open your eyes, suddenly there's a bus coming right at you. It's over. Nothing you can do. What's the thought that goes through your head? And without hesitation, I said, "I did my best. I did my best. I don't need to be the richest person in the world. I don't need to be the number one speaker in the world, but I think I lived a life of service. I tried to be kind to other people. I tried to spread a little joy. I'm okay with that."
When you think sort of your time since your mom died, growing up without a mom, or that poor relationship, um, are there pieces that were kind of missing that that could have helped you adjust or heal or move on from that in a I guess like healthier, more comfortable way that you didn't receive? Or are there some things that you're like, this really made a big difference that I had these things in my life?
For sure. Okay, now I got you. I mean, absolutely, there's stuff missing. There can't not be, because as you said, it's such a core relationship. Did dad do absolutely everything he could to make it okay? Hell yeah. Um, I know that, and as I've learned later, because I was just too young and didn't see these larger things going on in the adult world at the time. I know he's told stories of, especially after she passed, and those weeks after she passed are a blur. I have images, but not a lot of memories. And he said, yeah, like every day, one of the moms from our neighborhood would bring over a casserole or some food. And my dad said there was a freezer full of stuff he didn't have to cook for like 3 months because of all the food that was brought over. Because it was the early 80s and he was a single dad, and that wasn't the most normal thing in the whole wide world. And so people wanted to help. And we had a nice, close knit neighborhood. And I will hand it to the moms in that neighborhood for stepping up in a lot of ways. There were certainly partners that my dad had in the intervening years since he's now remarried to my stepmom Yvette, who they got together when I was in my early 20s, when I was in university, and she's a delight and I love her. But in the relationships he had in those intervening years, there was certainly some people that tried to step in and fill those roles. Um, Dad certainly, I was grateful for the fact that he was a more sensitive soul for a guy raised in the 50s and 60s. And, he would show emotion and be caring and really be open. And he always wanted to bring the fun for us. I mean, we were a household that could have carried a lot of sadness and did for a time. But in the years after that, what I remember and what we talk about the most when we're all sitting around reminiscing is the things that made us, that just laughing. A food fight is every Christmas we bring up, and I've actually told this story on stage a few times. It's a very seasonal story, but because as you know, I talk about food and cooking a lot as a metaphor, and I talk about that even just putting in the effort can, when people are hurting, can be enough. And the first Christmas after mom passed, so she died in April, and so this would have been Christmas of 81. And dad's a 36-year-old guy with 3 kids and is just trying his best to make it work and to give us a quote unquote normal Christmas. And, there was probably the late on the 24th with presents being wrapped and stockings being stuffed and just all this stuff. And I'm sure he was exhausted. And we got up on Christmas morning, and the way it worked in our house on Christmas was you'd get up, stockings, then breakfast, and then presents. There was no mad tearing of things. It was all very civilized. And so Christmas breakfast was a big deal for us. And we were getting ready for Christmas breakfast, and I'm sure he hadn't had near enough coffee and was bleary eyed. He's looking in the fridge and he's like, okay, breakfast for the kids. I don't even remember. It was, bacon or sausage or something. Okay, eggs. We're going to do eggs. Well, the kids like scrambled eggs. Plus, well, those are easy. I'm definitely going to make scrambled eggs. We'll do scrambled eggs. No, wait. Oh, hang on. You put milk in scrambled eggs. I got a carton of eggnog in the fridge here. Huh. It's Christmas. Interesting. So he made scrambled eggs with eggnog, which, as you can probably imagine, was horrible. It was like chewing on mushy cane sugar. Like, it was disgusting. I can't remember anything else from that Christmas, but I can taste it in my mouth right now. And it's spongy and eggs and sweetness, like just horrible, 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 horrible. I can't tell you what I got in my stocking that year. I can't tell you what I got for Christmas. I can't tell you who came over for Christmas dinner, what relatives were there. But every year without fail, we all bring up that story. Like, whenever we get together at Christmas, like, hey, Dad, you're going to make some scrambled eggs with eggnog for us this year? And we all laugh. But we laugh, and we joke and poke fun with love, because that effort so mattered to us. Like, that's the thing that made the difference. And so I think him being able to be vulnerable, he would share his pain. He would talk to us. We went to therapy as a family. He always cared about our mental health in that way. And but yeah, definitely things were missing. And as I sort of mentioned off the top, it's something I've had to sort through in therapy as an adult, in realizing my attachment style got stunted because, as my therapist told me, the most important female relationship in your life, she left when you were 10. Not on purpose, not her fault that she left, but she exited your life. And for a 10-year-old, like, she's gone, why is she gone? Why did she leave? That was somewhere in areas that I couldn't talk about. That conversation was going on in my head. And so I never wanted a woman to leave again. And
Mhm.
so I made some not great choices in some of my relationships in high school and even as an adult, where I would not in the choices of the people. I was with lovely people, and but sometimes in the things I would allow to happen or the role I would take in the relationship, just to make sure nobody would ever leave.
Right.
So those things definitely were an effect.
Mhm.
Sorry,
And so
very long-winded answer for you, Jen.
no, it's all good. It's all human. So, when you're doing these talks and you're talking to people about challenges and overcoming them, and making the most of your life, what are some of the messages that you're trying to convey?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to convey to people my big if you could distill what I talk about to, whether it's students, college, university students, high school students, or businesses or conferences or anything that I speak to, anyone that I speak to, if you needed to distill it down into one thing, it would be this phrase that is tattooed on my forearm that says, pain is inevitable, misery is a choice. Bad stuff's going to happen. That, like, nobody gets out of this life alive, and nobody gets out of this life unscathed. We've all got to, take our licks from time to time. What it comes down to is the choice of, are you going to respond or react? How are you going to let it affect your life long term? And these words have been defining for me. I saw a version of this, and this became the cornerstone of my speaking. Probably I was in my 30s and I was out for a run, and there was one of those church board things where they put different quotes on every day. They had a version a little bit different than this. It didn't have the right cadence and flow, but it made me literally stop in my tracks and go, huh, when I read it. And then by the end of the run, I had this rhythm of pain is inevitable, misery is a choice. Pain is inevitable, misery is a choice. That became the anchor for everything I've done since then. And I got myself this tattooed as my 50th birthday present to myself. And what I love about it the most is mom was right-handed, and we didn't her right hand was the one she lost use of. I didn't know what her handwriting looked like. And then I was going through an old memory box that dad had given us all, like, here's all your report cards and every clipping of you guys all in newspaper. Just take it all. I got no room for it anymore. We all got his Rubbermaid, and I was going through it, and my baby book was in there from
Mm.
before she got sick, and there was all these things written out, and I went, oh my god. And I started to furiously go through, and I found every letter, took super close pictures of them, sent them to my tattoo guy Anthony, and said, can we make this work? And he said, yeah, I'll forge the hell out of that, let's go. And so this is in mom's handwriting on my forearm.
That's
But
incredible.
that is the simplest distillation of what I talk about. Choices, that bad stuff's going to happen, the attitude you choose, resilience, positivity, all those things can all be summed up in pain is inevitable, misery is a choice.
I love that. So those montages of like memories that flash before people's eyes when they're about to
Yes.
die that we see. What are some memories that you think would come into your mind if that's the experience we may have before we die, or before we think we're going to die? What are some core things that you think are going to flash before your eyes, or that you hope maybe they haven't even happened yet?
Well, that's true. They may not have happened yet. That's such a good question, because I really feel like you don't have when and if that's the way that happens. Not sure how much choice we have in that, right? It
Yeah.
just I think it just your brain would do whatever the thing is. But if I was to choose or to speculate on what those things could be, um, obviously holding each of my kids for the first time, the
Mm.
day they were born, without a doubt. Um, I would say there's probably moments with my dad. I would say the smile on my mom's face when she said goodbye the last time that we visited her in the hospital, because I'm sure she knew.
Mhm.
And we were like, okay, we'll see you soon. And she just had this smile like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
And she knew. But how do you tell 8, 10, and 12-year-olds, yeah, you're not going to see me again?
Right.
And so that is a crystal clear image that's in my head. And I mean, I'm sure there's lots of other stuff. There's, standing in front of a crowd that I was just where everything just hit perfectly and it was just a magical show, seeing the Rocky Mountains for the first time, visiting the Arctic Circle, going to Rio, traveling to Europe, and different amazing things that I've filled my brain and my eyeballs with over my lifetime that I'm sure would flash by, uh, being with people that you love and partners that have made a difference in your life, and the dear friends that I share my time with, and the people that really get me through. I'm sure it would be just a massive montage of all those kinds of things. The part that I am most grateful for is it's an embarrassment of riches in terms of those memories. Which is why, yeah, if it all goes away tomorrow, I'm good,
Yeah.
because I've done my best. I've tried to live a life of positivity and of service, and I'm just overwhelmed by the great experiences and great friends and great people that I have in my life. So whatever happens, happens. But that gratitude is what I do to push me forward instead of, I've got to do so many more things before it's time. Like, you don't get to take it with you.
Mhm.
And it gives you such perspective of when little things happen that may suck, that they're not the end of the world. And I know we were talking offline before. I had something that grand scheme really doesn't freaking matter that much, but something that made me a little sad this morning. But yeah, I'm good now, especially as we're having this conversation. I'm fine. It's going to be fine. It wasn't meant to happen clearly. So I'm going to be fine. And I'm going to work out this seriously mundane situation that just bummed me out for a little while.
Mhm. Speaking of things you can't take with you, if you could take something with you, and this may or may not apply to you, is there something that you didn't buy that you either created or someone gave to you, or it could be anything? But is there something that you can think of that if you could take one thing with you in some sort of form of living beyond this form, uh,
Right.
what would you take with you? Or maybe what would you make sure your best friend burned so nobody found it?
Oh, geez. I don't think I have anything like that that I can think of that somebody has to burn. When you asked that question, three things popped into my mind. The first thing I would want to take with me is down the hall in the bedroom in my apartment. I have sitting on top of my dresser the teddy bear I was given by my mom on my first birthday.
Oh,
It has never been given a name. It's just bear. It's just my bear. And it was with me all through my childhood, stayed on my bed in my teen years, even in my bedroom. It would just sit there. I was a goofy kid who would still have, I was a 17-year-old guy with like a stuffed Kermit the Frog on his bed, whatever. Um, but I still have it. And it has, during that time when she passed, that thing soaked up all of my tears, all of them. It's all in there. And all the pain, anytime anything's been bad, I grab that bear. I remember when my oldest was going through some particular sadness and trauma and was having a bad time. And I picked them up when they were having a tough time and brought them over to my house that I had at the time, put them in their bed and gave them my bear. It said, "This thing has magical properties. You don't even understand." And I love that bear. In fact, when I I made a documentary of my cross Canada tour on my 20th anniversary, so I felt like I needed a production company name. It's a picture of that bear, and I called it Unnamed Bear Productions.
I love that. That's great.
And so, yeah, I would absolutely take that bear without question if that's something I could take. And in terms of things that have been given to me, I can see one of them right here in my office. A dear friend in the States, I talked about all the t-shirts that I had from all these different things in my life, events that I'd spoken at, my school, gifts given to me by my kids, whatever, and that I just never wear them. And I was confused when he asked me to send them all to him. And about a year later, I saw him and he made a quilt
Mhm.
out of all these t-shirts that are my entire life on a blanket. And it's heavy. It's perfect nap weight, this blanket, like just the weight you want to have a beautiful cozy nap, and it sits right here in my office, and it's my whole life on a blanket. And then I also have, strangely, a pair of shoes that were a gift from a dear speaker friend of mine, Scott, that he knew somebody in the States and was able to get me a pair of custom Nike Air Jordan Air Force Ones. They're Superman colors because Superman's always been a big thing to me. And one of my presentations that I've done in schools for years is called Hero Inside, was the name of the show. They have embroidered Hero Inside on the side of the there. It's one of the kindest gifts anybody's ever given me. And I would take those things with me. God, there's so many other things, but those are the first three things that popped in my head when you asked that.
Mhm.
And such a good question.
So, I mean, you speak for a living. Thousands of people have heard you. Um, do you ever think about your death? But do you ever think about, after you die, what you want people to remember? If there's like a specific message, a feeling, an experience. If is there something you want to like leave humanity? I know this is big, but we can say whatever we want right
Sure.
now. Is there something that like in certain moments you kind of want your energy to be a part of it? Anything that kind of comes up for you around that question?
I mean, all I would hope, in the simplest terms, I think, is that if somebody, I mean, obviously with people that are close to me in my life, that's a whole different thing. There's lifetimes of experiences there that they would hold on to. But if we're going with the example of somebody found out that I passed and I had maybe spoken at their school or at their company or at a conference, all I would want is for them to go, yeah, I remember that guy. That was a good day. That gave me something to think about, because I'm not going into any particular gig expecting I am changing the place
Mhm.
in one fell swoop. If that's what I thought, you'd have to butter down the doors to get my head through because it wouldn't fit. But I would. All I want is to maybe take somebody out of whatever they're feeling on a particular day and make them go, "Huh, never thought about it like that before."
Mhm.
And maybe give the like one of the it's funny, but in the fall I was in BC and I was speaking at a school, and this is high praise, which I will absolutely take. A grade 11 student at a high school in, I think, Mission, BC. I can't exactly remember where I was. But in BC, came up, shook my hand, and very, typical high school dude kind of thing. And he just said, "Bro, look, man, I'm not normally a real positive guy at all. Kind of the opposite, but damn, you made it pretty hard to be negative today." And I went, I will take that. Like, that's a win. Just that guy is
Mhm.
the win for my career.
Yep.
That's all I want is, yeah, today you made it pretty hard to be negative. Because
Yeah.
maybe there's a little nugget that they can take forward. And I know that there are a bunch of little nuggets in any given thing that I do in front of an audience. And I know not everybody's picking all of them up. But it's amazing when I will hear from somebody that I spoke to years before, who maybe still follows me on Instagram or we're friends on Facebook or whatever, where they reach out and just go, "I want you to know that thing you said, that changed my perspective, and I've kind of carried it forward." I used to give away these. Do I have one here? I used to give away these ticket stubs. Yeah, there, I got one. Used to give away these little ticket stubs because I told a story about that everybody keeps ticket stubs because, not because you're going to be able to get back into the thing, but because it's a memory.
Love it.
And that, you're going to get a ticket stub from school, you're going to get a ticket stub from a new job, whatever. And I used to carry around hundreds of these things and say, if you want a ticket stub from this show, come up and get one. And it, had it made it look like an actual ticket. And then on the back, the terms and conditions are a callback to everything that I'd spoken about. One of my great joys and honors is when I will get a note on Twitter or on Instagram or something of somebody that follows me, and they post a picture of a beaten up, ratty old ticket stub of mine and says, "Was cleaning up my wallet and look what I found." And then they tag me in it. And I can always kind of gauge how old the ticket stub is by the social media that is on there. It's when somebody tags one that has my MySpace address on it, I'm like, you've been holding on to that for a long time. And when that just, they held on to something, and that means something to me. That gives me more. I'm more grateful for that, and it's such an honor and a privilege when I hear stuff like that. That's, yeah, it's just little changes It's all about these micro changes.
Mhm.
I'm not going to change anybody's life full stop.
Mhm.
It's just little things to think about.
Yeah. What a gift that is. Um, well, I don't like to think about my friends dying, but I know that it's going to happen. We don't know if it'll be you or me first. But one of the things I'll remember about you, and our friendship's pretty fresh, pretty new.
Yes. Yep.
But
Definitely.
I think it went over the hey, you're a person I know when we had a really good hug. And I know that
Yep.
hugging might have nothing to do with death, but I want to bring that into this conversation because I know for you that's become something that you want to expand on or like bring attention to in sort of the next chapter of your life. So I just want to create this space to talk about hugs.
Well, I mean, honestly, it was when so we were at a business networking event, and we had met virtually. You were actually one of two people in the quote unquote audience. My first virtual presentation in COVID. It was you and our friend Kyle, who has sadly passed. And you two were there on a Facebook Live, the only two people I could see while speaking to hopefully hundreds of others, and it was an agonizing experience and everything else. So I knew you. I knew who you are. I think we had met once in person at a Mo Mondays, very briefly. And then we were at this business event, and I hadn't seen you in years. And we gave each other a good hug. It was a good, solid hug. And it tweaked, honestly, that conversation tweaked a thing in my mind because I had remembered reading an article about hugs. And it was actually my friend James Rouse would talk about this too, who's a fellow speaker, about oxytocin and the things that can, because oxytocin builds stronger bonds, makes you feel happy, reduces anxiety, and just in a very holistic sense, makes you feel better when you get oxytocin released. I mean, there's serotonin, there's dopamine, but oxytocin really does the trick. And oxytocin gets released when you have a hug for a certain amount of time. It starts at about 10 seconds. It really kicks in at 20 to 30. And that's when, you can really legitimately build a stronger bond with the person you're having a hug with. And so I saw you, gave you a hug, and then we went back in for a little bit extra. And that tweaked the thing in my brain. So I started thinking about it and researching it. And the interesting part was I looked up what the socially acceptable norm was for the
Mm.
length of a hug. And that is 3 seconds.
We went way far.
Oh, hell yeah. And I usually do with most people.
Mhm.
Give it a little extra pat on the back, a little extra squeeze and whatever. But 3 seconds is the social norm. 10 seconds is where oxytocin starts. 20 seconds is where it gets real good. So I've become this itch in my brain that I can't get rid of is those 7 seconds, those 17 seconds.
Mhm.
What's the magic that lies in there? What can we do with those 17 seconds
Mhm.
to make something really amazing happen? Like if you knew you could take a pill that would instantly reduce your anxiety, make you feel happy, and make you feel all warm inside and create stronger bonds with the people that you're around and that you care about, and it would happen almost immediately, you would probably do that. And if there were no side effects to said pill that you had to take, so I'm fascinated by these 17 seconds now. That's become a thing for me. It's going to be something on stage. I'll maybe get a couple of people up there and that know each other and have them hug, and we'll time them and we'll think about the things that people can say. But honestly, 1, 2, 3 ain't enough.
Mhm.
And that's the norm. That's what we accept. Anything else is weird. No, anything else is when it gets good.
Right.
So for me, it's got to be that bare minimum 10. And I mean, I even, that's why there's a lot of, and there's a whole other thing in terms of gender relationships and things like that. But there's so many of my dear male friends, people that I'm closest with, that maybe because of death and because you never know, and because of building strong bonds, when I say goodbye to them, and it may be something that's very non-traditional with big air quotes, I say, all right, talk to you later. Love you, man. Always. I saw one of my closest friends last night at a meeting for a local organization, gave him a big long hug and said, love you, brother. He said, I love you too. Always we say that. And then when he walked out the door, we always joke to him like, bye, honey. He said, see you, sweetheart. And and I've got several other friends that, all right, I love you, man. Always when I say goodbye. And that's part of the hugs too. Like I'm seeing a speaker friend of mine this week for a gig, and I haven't seen him in a while. And yeah, there's going to be a long hug. It's going to be a minimum 20, and I can't wait.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it actually, maybe has a lot to do with that because when we hug, it's when we're saying farewell, right? It's when
Yep.
we're having a final moment with someone, thinking maybe we'll see them again, but maybe we won't, right?
Yep.
So saying I love you, hugging. I remember in public school, one of my male friends' mom used to always say, "I always say I love you because I don't know when I'll see you again." And as a child, I was like, "That's weird," but it has stuck with me
Sure.
for 30 years. You don't know. So say I love you, even if it's uncomfortable, like whatever. At least if something happens, the words were said, the hug was given.
Yes.
That last moment is something that can be held. And we both know the brain is capable of experiencing something that it isn't experiencing in real time. So I can imagine our hug and I can get little bursts of that oxy, right?
Yep.
From the memory of that or imagining that. And so, hugs are, I guess, something we can give people that they can take with us. With
Yeah,
them.
I'm a big hugger. I always have been, and I'm really leaning in recently on this longer hug thing. It's not just, come in, couple of quick pats on the back. It's just even say if you just fill the space with it's been too long. Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. How are things? Oh, it's good. Like just that. That's going to fill the time.
Right?
Because if the awkward silence is your problem, just start saying nice things,
Right.
and that just accentuates the situation. Because
Mhm.
I love my friends, I love the people in my life, and I love those good long hugs.
Mhm. Well, I wish I could give you a big long hug right now, but I'll just have
Well,
to.
thank you, my friend. We'll wait until the next time we're hanging out or at
Yeah.
a a business thing or whatever, and we'll just be the two people walking around the room giving everybody what they would consider strangely long hugs to
And then over the
everyone.
shoulder, we'll just be like winking at each other.
Yeah, like got another one. Ha ha. We'll be the
Yes,
happiest people in the room, and everybody else is like, that person really held on for a while there. Like, and that's I think the social norm we need to change.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with me and with anyone who's listening to this. And I'm so grateful to have you in my life and to share the rest of this journey with you, however long that might be.
You bet. Well, it's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for thinking of me. And it's great to be able to chat with you about this stuff, Jenna. Thanks so much.